Hi, today I want to talk about rocket launchers, underbarrel grenade launchers and engineer turrets, as this is one of the things that Joshua, one of the developers that's concerned with balance, is looking at putting together a post about and then fixing in a future update, as there are some clear differences between the empires and some things which are a bit undesirable with those which are not different, like the underbarrel grenade launchers and the engineer turrets. Now the first thing I want to talk about today is the rocket launchers. Now, as far as rocket launchers go, those which are the default, or the ones that are dedicated anti-vehicle and anti-aircraft, ones that are lock-ons, are pretty well balanced. There's no real differences between them, and to be honest with you, I don't think the stats are actually different whatsoever, and they really need to be, because they all provide the same function, and they get done what they need to. However, one of the things that I do not like about those three weapons is that when dumbfired, each of them can kill an infantryman dead on. Now, while that's fine, what I don't like is when I run around a corner, right into the face of somebody with one, they open fire, and I die. And they don't die. They're still on their feet for some reason. Now, what I'd like to see is if that does happen, then the person that fires the rocket should also die. It should be, yeah, fine, you get a kill, but you also kill yourself in the process. So it should be something that people actively avoid doing. Either that, or you put on an army distance, like you get with the underbarrel grenade launcher rounds. Maybe even just 4 or 5 meters on it, so that you can then avoid both killing yourself, but you also avoid using it as a close range kind of poor man's shotgun. The next thing I want to talk about is the Empire-specific launchers. Now, those are the Lancer for the VS, the Striker for the TR, and the Phoenix for the NC. Now, I just want to nip through these quite quick and then dwell on one of them in particular. Now, I'm going to start off with the Lancer. The Lancer is the one that VS can use, and it's a direct fire energy weapon that's incredibly useful at long range against enemy vehicles. Now, despite that, its damage per second is quite low, and you don't get very many kills with it. You get only a few VS actually using the thing. Considerably less than the NC, and a huge amount less than the TR with their Striker. Now, they have the least amount of kills with it, obviously because they've got the fewest people, and it doesn't really seem to be effective. It leaves you vulnerable. When you're firing it, it's okay against ground vehicles. It's usable against aircraft, but only if the aircraft is particularly stupid, or the user of the Lancer is particularly good. Now, if you look at the Phoenix has a considerable amount more users than the Lancer. It has double the amount of kills compared to the Lancer, despite not having double the amount of users, and it's okay. It was horrifically overpowered when it could one-shot infantry, but then they stopped that, and basically then only became useful against vehicles, and in particular vehicles that were already burning, vehicles that were already damaged, because you're not going to do enough damage per second to actually kill one unless you use it in big groups. And even then, if you're shooting at it, you can potentially shoot down the missiles, because that's one of the unique features of this weapon. It's not a nice feature, but it does reduce the kill potential on it. Now, I want to talk about the Striker, because the Striker, unlike the Lancer and the Phoenix, is actually a lock-on weapon. It allows you to lock on and thereby scare off enemy vehicles, both air and ground. Now, that's pretty powerful as such, especially when you've got a huge number of users using the thing. You've got 1,610 people in a 3-week period you put in the thing, and using it to scare off and terrify enemy tanks and enemy aircraft. Now, that means that it's much more versatile than the other two weapons, and because it's used in such quantities, makes it incredibly difficult to field vehicles against the TR. It means that the TR, as a consequence, have to pull considerably less burster maxes. You look right here, they've pulled the least burster maxes out of each of the three empires, VS having to pull considerably more of them. Now, if you look at the AV maxes, the TR pull a reasonable amount of them. However, sorry, if we look down here, the TR pull a reasonable amount of maxes, but generally fracture maxes, because fracture maxes are pretty versatile. Again, they're good against both vehicles and they're good against infantry. You can see that by them having a reasonably, well, one of the better kills per unique with the battle rank 75 to 100, compared with the other ones. Even the Comet, which is the nearest competitor to it, is not considerably, but a little bit worse. Now, that all means that the TR have an incredibly useful anti-vehicle and anti-air deterrent. Now, it might not get them a huge amount of kills, because there's the damage it does, and after they fix lock-ons, it's okay, and you can obviously use flares and things to avoid it. break the lock by going behind hills, but it does mean that it's difficult to pull vehicles against the Terrans. So, what do we do with the Striker? Well, it needs to be changed so it's not as versatile as it currently is. It needs to be made so that it's an interesting weapon to use, fun to use, and you've also got to try and avoid pissing off the hundreds, probably thousands of TR that have actually bought the thing already. It's a difficult situation, but something does need to be done for the sake of balance. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the underbarrel grenade launchers. The underbarrel grenade launchers are incredibly useful. They give you the ability to drop an explosive grenade onto somebody's head if you're light assault, or if you're obviously using anything else, and it's very, very easy to get kills with. I mean, for me, with the Solstice SF for the VS on my light assault, I've got over 2,000 kills with the thing, and I only gave up using it because basically I want to get a Raxim on other weapons. Now, that's the underbarrel grenade launcher is a problem, and it's a problem because it is no fun to fight against. It's used too often to camp spawn rooms. I mean, you can see here I'm fighting on a tower. It's very easy as a light assault to just sit in one of the roofs and just drop underbarrel grenades onto the people defending. It's very easy as an engineer to sit there with the same equivalent weapons that light assaults have and use it to endlessly spam grenades onto the target. Now, what I'd like to see with it, it's not that it gets a particular nerf to make it less powerful, because it's a fun thing to use and you should be able to get kills with weapons. But what I want to see is to make them either cost resources like standard grenades do, or you can make them again like standard grenades, not have them replenished from ammo packs. I mean, you can no longer just spam them as an engineer, as an example, or if you've got an engineer nearby. Now, perhaps a combination of both of those is warranted, but personally I think only one of them is probably what should happen at first, and then potentially change it after that. The final thing I want to talk about today is engineered turrets, the MANA turrets that they can place down and certify to make them slightly improved. Now, these come in two different flavours at the moment, anti-infantry and anti-vehicle. Now, the anti-infantry turrets, they're okay, there's no real issue with them at all. But the anti-vehicle ones have been causing problems since they were introduced, because their effective range is massive and they do a huge amount of damage. You can also guide the things into the target by wire guiding them. Now, what I'd like to see is a few tweaks. I'd like to see the AV MANA turret's rockets go dumb after, say, 100, 150, 200 meters, so it can no longer be used to deliver pixel-perfect explosives on range against targets. Now, I'd also like to see turrets cost resources. So engineers have got to think about where they're going to place them, if they want to use it, and also provide a little bit of a limit on them as well, so they can't just use them again and again and again and not stress about their resources. So I know resources are being overhauled, however, what I'd like to see is whatever system is used in the future gets adapted to include engineered turrets as part of whatever resource system, whatever acquirement system is used to get them. Now, I'd also like to see with the AV turrets, I'd like to see players able to shoot down the rockets just like Phoenix missiles, like I mentioned earlier. And that would give you some defense against them, which I think is honestly needed, because they are very powerful and they do need to be dealt with. One point to mention is that since the performance patch, you can now see these rockets coming in pretty reliably, and so you will actually be able to see the things to shoot them down. Also, I'd quite like to see engineers be given an anti-aircraft version, some kind of flak launcher, something that allows engineers to take territory out in the world and hold it against anybody that's coming if they choose their loadout and certify into it and use station cash and whatever to buy the thing. It just makes them a bit more versatile, a bit more useful, and gives engineers a bit more things to do. Okay, and that's all the three things I wanted to talk about today. So we've covered rocket launchers, underbarrel grenade launchers, and MANA turrets. Three things which, unfortunately, leave a little bit to be desired. I hope this has been thought-provoking, and if you want to discuss this further, please leave a comment or anything else. If you liked what you've watched, please subscribe, and well, that'll certainly help me out and make me feel good about myself. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you on the battlefield.